What if the CEO of a billion-dollar bank walked into her own branch and no one recognized her? Picture this. A woman in ripped jeans and a faded hoodie steps into a glittering financial empire, her presence as unnoticed as the potted plants. But when she tries to withdraw $500 in cash, chaos erupts: suspicion, a PTSD-stricken guard, and a shocking counterfeit scheme that threatens to destroy everything. This isn't just a story about power. It's about the masks we wear and the secrets hiding in plain sight. Hey, if you're hooked already, smash that subscribe button and join me as we unravel a tale where corporate intrigue collides with raw humanity. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Mercer & Company, Financial's Sacramento branch, casting a golden glow over the polished marble floors. Employees in crisp suits and ties moved with robotic efficiency, their fingers clattering against keyboards in a symphony of corporate diligence. None of them noticed the woman in ripped jeans and a faded gray hoodie standing quietly in the customer line, her presence as unremarkable as the potted fern in the corner. Talia Mercer adjusted her oversized sunglasses, suppressing a smirk. How ironic, she thought. The founder of one of the fastest-growing financial firms on the West Coast was about to withdraw $500 in cash from her own bank, dressed like a college student on a caffeine run. But today wasn't about power plays or boardroom theatrics. It was her daughter's 12th birthday, and time spent debating outfits was time stolen from picking the perfect gift. At the counter, Jasper Quinn, a fresh-faced teller with a military-straight posture, eyed the next customer. His gaze landed on Talia, and his brows furrowed. The bank's recent anti-fraud training flashed in his mind. Unkempt attire, avoidance of eye contact, and small cash withdrawals are red flags. His supervisor's warning echoed louder. One more mistake, Jasper, and you're out. Last month's humiliation still burned. A misplaced decimal point had cost a client $10,000. The deduction from his paycheck was nothing compared to the shame of being called careless in front of the team. Now he gripped the edge of the counter, determined to prove his vigilance. Next in line, please, Jasper announced, his voice tighter than a vault door. Talia slid into the seat, sliding her ID and a withdrawal slip across the counter. I'd like $500 in cash, please. Jasper glanced at her driver's license. Talia Mercer. The name rang no bells. He typed rapidly, pulling up her account. The screen blinked. Account status. VIP Platinum tier. His pulse quickened. A platinum client in that outfit? I'll need a second form of ID, he said flatly, avoiding her eyes. Talia paused, her amusement fading. Is there a problem? Standard procedure for high-risk transactions. The lie slipped out smoothly. In truth, Jasper's training had emphasized large withdrawals as risks, but fear had rewired his logic. A flicker of irritation crossed Talia's face. She pulled out a crumpled utility bill from her hoodie pocket. Jasper scrutinized it like a forensic analyst, comparing dates and addresses. The seconds stretched. Behind her, an elderly man coughed impatiently. Is this really necessary? Talia asked, her tone calm but edged. Jasper's jaw tightened. Prove you're competent. Prove you're not a failure. I'm afraid so. We've had security upgrades. Talia leaned back, studying him. The boy, because he was barely more than that, had the rigid bearing of someone clinging to protocol like a lifeline. She almost pitied him. Almost. Call your manager, she said quietly. That won't be needed. Jasper's cheeks flushed. I'm authorized to. Now. The word, soft as a dagger's whisper, froze him. He reached for the phone, fingers trembling. As Jasper muttered into the receiver, Talia's phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. Reminder. Board meeting at 2 p.m. FYI, the branch audit reports are flagged for irregularities. She frowned. Irregularities? Behind the counter, Jasper's resolve wavered. The manager, Griffin Holloway, was already striding over, his tailored suit radiating authority. Jasper's stomach dropped. This is it. He'll fire me on the spot. But Griffin's attention wasn't on the teller. His sharp eyes locked onto Talia, narrowing as if trying to place her. She met his gaze unflinching. Is there an issue here, Miss? Griffin began. Mercer, Talia replied. The name hung in the air. Griffin's face paled. The air in the bank thickened like syrup. Griffin Holloway's polished Oxfords clicked against the marble floor as he approached Talia, his mind racing. Mercer. The surname glared at him from her driver's license, a silent taunt. He had seen it before. Etched on the brass plaque in the executive lounge, stamped on memos about corporate restructuring, whispered in rumors about the CEO who rarely visited branches. But this woman, hoodie-clad, sunglasses perched defiantly on her nose, couldn't possibly be. Miss Mercer, Griffin repeated, forcing his voice into a practiced neutrality. I apologize for the inconvenience. May I see your documents? Talia pushed her ID across the counter, her gaze sharpening. She recognized Griffin's type. Mid-30s, ambition masquerading as diligence, the kind of man who ironed his socks, the kind who'd sell his grandmother to climb the corporate ladder. But the tremor in his fingers as he took her license betrayed something deeper. Fear, not arrogance. Griffin typed her name into the system, his screen flashing a crimson alert. VIP restricted access. His breath hitched. Only 3 accounts in the entire state held that status, all tied to Mercer & Company's board. He glanced at Talia, then at Jasper, who stood rigid behind the counter, beads of sweat dotting his temple. Mr. Quinn, Griffin said, locking the screen abruptly. Please assist the next customer. As Jasper retreated, relief and shame warring on his face, Griffin turned to Talia. A moment of your time, Ms. Mercer. Privately. He led her to a glass-walled office overlooking the lobby, its shelves adorned with trophies for branch excellence, and a framed photo of Griffin shaking hands with a woman in a tailored blazer, Talia, though her hoodie and messy bun made the resemblance dubious. She noted the photo but said nothing. Your account history, Griffin began, steepling his hands, shows unusual activity. Talia raised an eyebrow. Unusual. Multiple high-value transfers to offshore accounts in the past 6 months. Inconsistencies in documentation. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I've flagged these to corporate, but the reports were dismissed. Now you're here withdrawing cash without prior notice. Talia's pulse quickened. The audit text from her assistant, irregularities, suddenly made sense. But she kept her tone light. And your conclusion? Griffin hesitated. For weeks he'd dissected the numbers. Shell companies in the Caymans, phantom invoices, a trail of digital breadcrumbs leading back to Mercer & Company's internal servers. He'd stayed late, cross-referencing data until his eyes burned, terrified of being labeled a conspiracy theorist. But this was no theory. I think you're testing us, he said carefully, or covering your tracks. Talia laughed, a sound like shattering crystal. You think I'd launder money from my own bank? It's the perfect cover. Griffin's composure cracked, revealing a raw edge. Who would suspect the CEO? The word hung between them. Talia removed her sunglasses, fixing him with a stare that could melt steel. If I were laundering money, Mr. Holloway, I wouldn't do it in ripped jeans. Griffin flinched but pressed on. Then explain the transfers. The $2 million to Grand Cayman last quarter. The $1.5 million to confidential mergers, Talia cut in. Above your clearance level. I'm the branch manager. I have a right to. You have a right to follow protocol. She stood, her height matching his despite her sneakers. But you're not. You're harassing a client based on paranoia. Griffin's jaw twitched. Paranoia? He'd seen the consequences of complacency. His father, a retired banker, losing his pension to a Ponzi scheme. He'd vowed never to be that naive. Now he slid a folder across the desk, its contents a labyrinth of spreadsheets and highlighted transactions. Explain this, then. Talia skimmed the pages, her calm fracturing. The numbers were damning. Unless you knew about the covert acquisition of a failing European fintech firm, a deal she'd orchestrated to outmaneuver competitors. The offshore accounts? Holding companies. The missing paperwork? Deliberate to avoid leaks. But admitting this would expose her strategy. Griffin, for all his bullheadedness, was still a risk. You're diligent, she said finally, closing the folder. I'll give you that. But you're chasing shadows. Griffin's fists clenched. Then why are you here? To mock us? To see if we'll roll over and ignore the stench? Talia's phone buzzed again. Another audit alert. She silenced it, a plan crystallizing. I'm here to withdraw $500. Process the transaction, Mr. Holloway. Not until you answer. The standoff stretched. Outside, customers glanced curiously at the office. Jasper lingered by the water cooler, pretending not to eavesdrop. Talia sighed. Call the compliance department. Ask for Valerie Cho. Use my name. Griffin dialed, his skepticism palpable. When Valerie Mercer & Company's chief compliance officer answered, her voice tinny through the speaker, Talia leaned in. Val? It's Talia. Tell Mr. Holloway to stop wasting my time. A pause. Then Valerie's laugh rang out. Griffin, you idiot. She owns the damn bank. The color drained from Griffin's face. Talia smirked, but her mind churned. The irregularities were real. And someone was using her company to hide them. The lobby buzzed with tension. Griffin Holloway's hands trembled as he handed Talia her $500. The bill's crisp, but his pride crumpled. Valerie Cho's laughter still echoed in his skull. She owns the damn bank. A humiliating punchline to his self-righteous crusade. Yet Talia's gaze held no triumph, only a simmering urgency. She pocketed the cash, her mind already dissecting Valerie's earlier warning. The audit trail leads back to internal servers. Someone's covering their tracks. Before she could leave, Griffin cleared his throat. The source of funds. Protocol requires documentation for cash withdrawals over $300. Talia froze. Protocol? This wasn't protocol, this was a vendetta. You've seen my account. Every cent here is mine. Not the account, Griffin countered, a desperate edge in his voice. The purpose. Anti-terrorism financing laws require. I'm buying a birthday gift for my daughter, she snapped. Prove it. The demand hung like a guillotine. Around them, customers craned their necks. Jasper, now refilling brochures by the door, glanced over nervously. Talia's composure frayed. She'd built Mercer & Company on transparency. Yet here she was, cornered by her own policies twisted into weapons. Call security, Griffin ordered a passing teller. You're joking. Talia's laugh was razor-sharp. Standard procedure. He parroted her earlier words, vindication glinting in his eyes. Darnell Cole, the bank's newest security guard, materialized like a storm cloud. His broad frame blocked the fluorescent lights, casting a shadow over Talia. At 6 feet 4 inches with a marine buzz cut, he was hired for intimidation, not conversation. But his eyes, haunted and hyper-focused, told another story. Afghanistan. Ambush. The crack of gunfire. A child's backpack left in the dust. Darnell blinked, sweat pricking his neck. The lobby's air conditioning morphed into desert heat. Griffin's voice warped into his lieutenant's. Check that package, Cole. Now. Talia's hoodie blurred into insurgent robes. Her clenched fists became a detonator. Step back, ma'am, Darnell barked, hand hovering near his taser. This is absurd, Talia hissed, turning to Griffin. Tell him who I am. But Griffin said nothing. His silence a petty rebellion. Darnell's pulse roared. Radio static. Screams. The backpack exploding. On the ground, he shouted, lunging. Talia sidestepped, but Darnell seized her wrist, twisting it into a lock he'd drilled 1,000 times. Pain shot through her shoulder. The lobby erupted, gasps, chairs scraping, someone dialing 911. Darnell, stop. Griffin finally found his voice, but it was too late. Talia's hoodie sleeve ripped, revealing a scar snaking up her forearm. A relic of her early days defending a branch from armed robbers. Darnell's gaze locked onto it. Reality crashed back. Not a bomb. Not a threat. Phew. A mother. He released her, staggering back. I thought you were. A terrorist? Talia rasped, clutching her arm. Her anger faltered at the terror in his eyes. Not of her, but of the ghosts he carried. Griffin rushed forward, panic-stricken. Miss Mercer, I didn't mean. Save it. She straightened, her voice ice. You wanted proof? Here's your proof. From her wallet, she flung a photo onto the counter. A grinning girl with Talia's hazel eyes, hugging a golden retriever. Lena. 12 today. She wants a puppy, but I'm allergic. So instead, I'm buying her a vintage Star Wars poster. A New Hope, her favorite. The seller only takes cash. The lobby fell silent. Even Griffin couldn't weaponize that. Darnell sank into a chair, head in hands. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be here. Talia studied him, the tremor in his shoulders, the way his eyes darted to exits. She recognized the signs. Her brother had come home from Iraq the same way. You served? She asked softly. He nodded, mute. She handed him a card. Call this number. Mercer & Company covers therapy for veterans. No excuses. Griffin stared at the photo of Lena, shame curdling his resolve. The audit warnings, the offshore transfers, none of it justified this. But as Talia strode out, he noticed something. The serial numbers on her $500 bills were hastily scribbled on the withdrawal slip. Odd. Outside, Talia speed-dialed Valerie. Freeze all internal audits. Someone's framing us, and it's not Griffin. You sure? Valerie asked. He's a pain but not a criminal. The real culprit left a clue. She glanced at the cash in her hand, the ink smudged. Counterfeit. Whoever was laundering money had just made it personal. The counterfeit bills burned in Talia's pocket as she re-entered the bank. Her hoodie swapped for a tailored blazer. The lobby, still buzzing from the earlier chaos, fell silent. Griffin Holloway stood behind the counter, his tie crooked and eyes bloodshot. When he saw her, he stiffened like a soldier awaiting court-martial. Talia strode past the gawking customers and stopped before the Employee of the Month board. Her finger tapped a framed photo of Griffin shaking hands with a woman in a sleek pantsuit, herself from 3 years ago, when she'd promoted him to branch manager. The plaque beneath it bore her signature, to Mercer. Read it, she said, her voice slicing through the tension. Griffin's throat bobbed. In recognition of Griffin Holloway's integrity and dedication. Louder. Integrity and dedication to Mercer & Company's values, he recited, each word a needle to his pride. Talia yanked the black CEO card from her wallet and slapped it onto the counter. The embossed silver logo glinted under the lights, unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the room. Jasper dropped a stack of deposit slips. You questioned my identity, Talia said, cold fury simmering beneath her calm. But you never questioned this. She pointed to her signature on the plaque, then to the card. Your paranoia blinded you to the truth. I gave you this job. I trusted you. Griffin's knees threatened to buckle. The woman he'd accused of fraud was the same one who'd written "Promote this man. He sees what others miss" in his file. Now her trust lay in ashes, and he had no one to blame but himself. Terminate me, he muttered. I deserve it. Talia leaned in, her whisper lethal. You think this is about you? Look. She tossed the counterfeit $500 onto his desk. Someone's using my bank to launder money, and your little witch hunt almost let them get away with it. Griffin picked up a bill, rubbing the ink between his fingers. It smudged, a crude fake. But the offshore transfers, the audit trail. Misdirection, Talia snapped. While you were busy harassing me, the real culprit was erasing their tracks. These counterfeits. She gestured to the money. A message. They're mocking us. The realization hit Griffin like a bullet. His obsession with proving Talia guilty had made him a pawn. He'd ignored the bigger picture, the patterns he'd once prided himself on detecting. I didn't know, he choked out. That's the problem. Talia's tone softened, but only slightly. You stopped asking why and started needing who. That's how good people become weapons. She turned to the stunned onlookers, tellers, customers, Darnell lingering by the door. Effective immediately, Mr. Holloway will lead a task force to overhaul our fraud detection protocols. And for the next 6 months, every employee here, her gaze pinned Jasper, will attend workshops on ethical judgment, starting with understanding motives before drawing conclusions. Griffin stared, incredulous. You're not firing me? Fire you. Talia almost smiled. I need you paranoid, but pointed at the right targets. She slid a file across the desk, its contents detailing the counterfeit operation. Find who did this. Prove you're still the man I promoted. As Griffin gripped the file, Darnell stepped forward. Ma'am? About earlier. I'd like to resign. Talia arched a brow. Why? Because you made a mistake. Because I'm broken, he said, voice cracking. Bullshit. The curse startled the room. You think you're the only one carrying ghosts? She rolled up her sleeve, revealing the jagged scar. I got this disarming a robber while 7 months pregnant. My daughter's first kicks happened in an ambulance. She stepped closer. You don't resign. You get help. Then you come back and teach our security team how to spot real threats. Darnell's eyes glistened. Yes, ma'am. As Talia turned to leave, Jasper blurted, Ms. Mercer? I'm sorry. About everything. She paused. Sign up for the first workshop, Jasper. And next time, assume the hoodie's a person, not a threat. Outside, Talia dialed Valerie. Griffin's on the case. Freeze all cash transactions until we purge the counterfeits. And the mole? Valerie asked. They'll slip up, Talia said, watching Griffin through the window. He was already barking orders, his shame channeled into ferocious focus. And when they do, we'll be ready. 2 weeks later, the Sacramento branch of Mercer & Company gleamed with renewed vigor. Sunlight streamed through freshly cleaned windows, illuminating a new placard in the lobby. Understanding motives, not just actions. The mantra of Talia's cultural overhaul. Employees milled about in relaxed blazers instead of stiff suits, their conversations punctuated by genuine laughter. Even the potted fern seemed livelier. Jasper Quinn adjusted his tie, a striped navy blue one, a gift from his mother after he'd tearfully confessed his hoodie blunder over family dinner. He glanced at the clock. 9:58 a.m. She'd arrive any minute. The glass doors swung open. Talia Mercer strode in, her charcoal gray Valentino suit commanding attention, stilettos clicking a rhythm of quiet authority. Her hair, once hidden under a hoodie, cascaded in chestnut waves. Jasper gaped. The woman who'd once looked like a sleepy grad student now radiated the energy of a queen inspecting her kingdom. Good morning, Madam Secretary of Finance. Jasper blurted, bowing slightly. The lobby erupted in giggles. Talia arched an eyebrow. Secretary of Finance? Should I expect a cabinet position next, Mr. Quinn? Jasper flushed. And no, I just meant, you look important. I've always been important, she said, her lips twitching. But the suit helps. She turned to the room, raising her voice. Where's Holloway? I've got a withdrawal to make. Griffin emerged from his office, sleeves rolled up and a tablet tucked under his arm. Dark circles still shadowed his eyes, but his posture had lost its predatory stiffness. Ms. Mercer. Your usual private room. The counter's fine. She slid into a teller's seat, ignoring the VIP placard. Griffin hesitated, then nodded to Jasper. You handle this. Jasper's hands trembled as Talia handed him a slip. $500. Cash. Non-sequential serial numbers, please. The lobby froze. Griffin's head snapped up. Even Darnell, now stationed calmly by the door, tensed. Why you want non-sequential bills? Jasper stammered. Is that a problem? Talia's tone was innocence itself. I'm buying a vintage Millennium Falcon model. The seller's eccentric, thinks numbered bills attract government spies. A beat of silence. Then Griffin snorted. A teller muffled a laugh into a file folder. Jasper's panic melted into a grin. Classic Star Wars tax evasion. Understood. He processed the transaction with exaggerated solemnity, handing her a stack of bills. Randomized as requested. May the force be with your negotiations. Talia pocketed the cash, her eyes glinting. Impressive. You've learned to assume eccentricity before malice. Workshop lesson number 3, Jasper said, puffing his chest. Motives over myths. As laughter filled the room, Griffin approached Talia, lowering his voice. The counterfeit trail led to a former IT contractor. He'd planted fake transactions to hide his embezzlement. We're working with the FBI. And the offshore accounts? Shell companies tied to his brother-in-law. Griffin shook his head. Amateur hour. I should have seen it sooner. Talia studied him, the humility in his admission, the lack of defensiveness. You saw it eventually. That's what matters. Near the entrance, Darnell waved awkwardly. Talia nodded and he approached, his posture straighter, eyes clearer. First therapy sessions tomorrow, he said. And I redesigned the security manual. Added a chapter on trauma awareness. Talia smiled. Make it required reading. As she turned to leave, Jasper called out. Wait. Is Lena's poster? Above her bed, Talia said. Next to a photo of this branch. She winked. To remind her that even CEOs get schooled sometimes. The employees burst into applause, not for her title, but for the lesson she'd etched into their culture. Griffin chuckled, flipping open the new training manual. Scrawled on the first page was Talia's personal addendum. Assume ignorance before evil. Assume fear before fraud. And for God's sake, assume a woman in a hoodie might be your boss. Outside, Talia paused, watching her reflection in the polished glass. The suit, the confidence, the respect, they were armor, yes. But her greatest power lay in the humanity she'd forced them all to confront. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lena. Can we get a puppy now? Please. Talia sighed, typing back. Compromise. A goldfish named Chewbacca. As her car pulled away, the bank's laughter followed her. A symphony of growth, and the best birthday gift she'd ever given herself. As Talia Mercer drives away, the bank's laughter fades but the shadows linger. Who planted the counterfeit bills? How deep does the betrayal go? And will her daughter ever get that puppy? The real game is just beginning. Stay tuned, because in the next episode, the walls close in, and not everyone will walk away unscathed. Don't forget to hit the bell so you don't miss a single twist. See you in the shadows.